On this week's episode of Star Trek Galactica, Battlestar Picard. No, Venture Brothers. Doom Patrol? Star Trek Picard! Season 2, Episode 7. Well, this was a hodgepodge of horribleness that seemed to be ripped off from multiple other properties. In fact, we even had a cameo from Gaius Baltar.
Up to this point, the past 2 episodes, we had Agnes wearing that red dress and having the Borg Queen. So this clearly was first calling it an homage. Then last episode, I just said they were outright stealing from Battlestar Galactica. And now to actually have the actor who played Gaius Baltar as, I guess, Picard's father inside his head. Yeah, it was nice to see the actor, but after stealing from Battlestar Galactica like they were, I didn't see it as clever or interesting that they had that Gaius Baltar actor. It just reaffirmed to me that yes, they were stealing the red dress and the Borg Queen from Battlestar Galactica. It just reaffirmed to me. It wasn't a coincidence. They were actively stealing that from Battlestar Galactica.
Well, it just goes to show there are absolutely zero original ideas on this show.
Yep.
None. Everything they do has been stolen from somewhere else. And it's not even like they're doing it in an homage kind of way. This is just outright Frankenstein's monster episodes of things they've cobbled together from better franchises.
And I don't know, the audience who is watching this and liking it, I said this a few videos ago about, are they really science fiction fans? Are they not aware of these properties? This isn't one of these situations where everything's been done before, so of course things are going to be mashed up together. No, this is not that. This is stolen. They're stealing material from franchises that came before them. And I guess they're hoping their audience doesn't know that they're doing that, because this isn't those ideas have been mashed up a million times. Sure, and that can happen. But this is not that. They are actively stealing from previous properties. They don't seem to have any shame, and their audience, I guess, doesn't care. I mean, they have no concept of plagiarism or originality. They just accept this stuff as, good.
Yeah, they clearly either A, haven't seen the other properties that are being stolen from, or these people just don't care. Either way, I don't have any respect for people who actually watch this and are okay with what they're watching. In fact, like it. What is wrong with you?
This was stolen from... This episode was specifically stolen from 2 properties. You had a bit of Battlestar Galactica with Gaius and the carryover, but this was a Doom Patrol ripoff. This was a blatant ripoff of Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
Either from the TV series or the comic that the TV series was based on, the Jane Patrol episode.
Yeah.
And I know you'll get into that later. This was a bad ripoff of Doom Patrol. People who are watching this who aren't familiar with where they got the idea from, oh my gosh, this is such a great idea of going inside somebody's mind and meeting these different parts of their memories and stuff. Yeah, I guess that would sound great if you weren't familiar with what they stole it from.
Mm-hmm. This idea of going into somebody's psyche, it's not new. This is a common trope. However, the way that they did this, it reminded me so much of those other 2 shows that did it better. Again, if you can't do it better, then don't copy somebody else, because you just look like a schmuck.
And the people who are liking this, if you're not familiar with the original material, when somebody points out to you what they're doing, shut up. Shut up and listen.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe you could learn something. If you're not aware of what they're stealing from, listen. Start to learn that these people behind this show have no creativity at all. All they are doing is stealing.
Yeah.
Because when you go through Discovery and you go through Picard, they have stolen from franchises. The Terminator, that whole control stuff, was a ripoff of Skynet and the Terminator.
Yep.
You could go through and list all the things they've stolen from. No, it's not, they're kind of similar. No, they've stolen from this material. They've just stolen this material. They don't even say in the credits inspired by or to give some sort of credit. They just steal it and they just expect their audience to go, yep, they're not going to figure it out. I guess they think so little of their audience, they figure their audience will never figure it out, or their audience is just perfectly fine with plagiarism, because this is plagiarism. This is not, oh, it's a similar concept. This is out and out plagiarism.
Yeah. So, in the episode, I'm just going to go through this real quick because there was really no substance to this. Obviously, we left Jean-Luc in his little coma. Talon, she was going to go into his mind in some sort of weird meld, using some sort of contraption on her head that made her ears look made her ears look Romulan shaped. And it's later revealed that, yes, indeedy, she is a Romulan. So, again, she apparently is one of Laris's ancestors or something. It's just beyond stupid at this point. Like, too many coincidences, just too much cutesy, like, just, there's a limit to what you should do with these things. And it's kind of like going into like Mary Sue territory. If plotting had a Mary Sue equivalent, this is it. Because, like with the Mary Sue, everything goes her way. She's perfect at everything first time out. Like the whole world revolves around her.
Everybody likes her.
Yeah, and this is the plot. This is like everything in the plot just falls into place perfectly for these weird, connections and things. And it's just, it's just... the way that they do that, it's too much, and it just takes me out of the suspension of disbelief. Because it's too much.
Well, there's only so much you can disregard.
Yeah.
And to say, look, you still have to give me something that my brain can work with and go, yes, if I imagined if that situation was like that, then the rest of these ideas about how I know the world works, I can apply.
Yep.
But if you're going to go past a certain point and just inject so much bullshit that you go well past that line where I can't suspend anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know how people can enjoy this. And I was going to ask you, so was she saying that she was an ancestor of Laris?
Well, that's what Jean-Luc postulated.
Okay.
So we don't know.
So, or is she the same entity, just somehow
maybe
immortal?
She actually is.
And she just met her. He met her earlier in the timeline.
Yeah, because, and it might turn out to be this way, but clearly this Talon is assigned to watch over Rene Picard. So would it stand to reason that maybe this same Romulan might be assigned to the Picard family in general? So Laris actually is Talon?
Yeah, like that's what I didn't get, is if this was if this really was a Romulan, or if this was some sort of entity with a long lifespan that just looked like a Romulan. I didn't understand exactly what they were getting at. And honestly, I don't care enough to find out because it doesn't matter. It was so stupid, I don't care.
So anyways, inside Jean-Luc's head, he's a little boy and Talon is in there. Jean-Luc is with his mother and there's some monster after them and she gets dragged away by the monster. She's dragged him down to the dungeon area of the chateau. His foot goes through some rotted wood in the floor and he's stuck there apparently for hours before his father finds him. It comes to light that the reality was that Jean-Luc's mother was very mentally ill, that his father really wasn't a monster. He was trying to protect him from his mother's illness.
And we found out all of this inside Picard's mind. He was on a starbase or a starship, and he was being interviewed by, for most of the episode, you thought was a psychologist, and that was the guy who played Gaius Baltar in Ronald D. Moore's Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, and then it turns out that guy was actually Jean-Luc's father.
And that image of what because again, this is all in Picard's mind.
Yep.
That image was actually his dad.
Yeah, and when he and Talon come out of the group coma, I guess, it's implied before they leave that there's more to what happened, because we see Jean-Luc's mother is locked up in a room. Jean-Luc has a key, and it appears that he's going to be letting her out. So we don't know what happened after that, but they seem to imply that something worse happened than just what we've seen so far. Which, again, I'll just say this. At Jean-Luc's age, I mean, how old is the actor in real life?
In the late 70s.
Late 70s. Yeah. So it's like...
He's playing a 90-year-old in the show, though.
Oh, all right. Well, in that case... Why is he finally dealing with this crap from his childhood at 90 years old? Come on.
I saw somebody point out, it was in a comment of one of our previous videos. So Picard, through his history on the TV show, he dealt with being interrogated by that Cardassian. There are 4 lights. We're all familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he also had the episode with the inner light. A version of a life was compressed inside of him over a few hours. And of course, Locutus.
Yeah.
So all of these things you think would have preyed, especially the Cardassian and the Locutus assimilation, would have unearthed any weakness in his personality to take advantage of.
Yep.
So you're telling me now, a man, the character is in his 90s, you're telling me after all he's been through, that only now is this stuff surfacing.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the other comments that I saw, it dealt with, why does it matter whether or not Jean-Luc was running away from his childhood and his past versus running to exploration and going to space and Starfleet? And there's a huge difference between running away from something and running to something else. Because if you're just running away from something, I mean, you're just trying to escape something. You're not aiming to succeed in something else. All you're trying to do is run away.
Yeah, your goal is to get away from whatever you're running. You're not really caring about what gets you away. You just want to get away from it.
Yeah.
Or if you're running towards something, you very much care about where you're heading.
Yeah, and it matters a lot. If Picard's destination was just to get away versus he was drawn to Starfleet because he wanted to be a starship captain.
And an explorer.
Yes, and an explorer versus someone who's trying to run away from something.
It was a character assassination when they did this to him.
Yeah, because I'm not going to call him a coward for running away from a situation rather than dealing with it. However, if you're 90 years old and you're finally dealing with something that happened in your childhood, I do believe that that's a little bit late because, you should have that shit all worked out by the time you're middle-aged. You just should.
Yeah, I mean, I know you and I have talked about this before, but like people we've known, if they have issues with their parents, when you're in your, teens and 20s, that's the time to be dealing with that stuff, and that can affect how well you do in life. I mean, I certainly understand that. I've dealt with a little bit of that myself.
Yeah, even if stuff crops up in the 30s,
yep,
maybe even the 40s if it was really severe, I can understand that. However, if it goes beyond that, boy howdy, you should have done something about that a long time ago.
You should have went out and sought out a therapist or sought out some friends to talk through this stuff, or a wife or a husband. You should have worked through this by the time you hit your 40s. No matter what the big trauma is, I mean, a person shouldn't be dwelling on something, even something very horrible. You shouldn't be dwelling in your adulthood. When you're a child, you're trying to deal with that. I get that. Then you're an adult, and maybe you've got a decade or two, you've got to work that out. But if you're 90 years old and you're still dealing with something when you were like 10, 12 years old, whatever, however old he was, there's, especially in the supposed enlightened future where he should have access to therapists and whatever else he would need, this doesn't make any sense to me why this would be unearthed this late in his life, in his 90s. And it's not, again, to remind people, this is not Jean-Luc Picard the human. This is a android of some sort. So this isn't even like a human being dealing with this. This is some sort of Cylon that's dealing with an echo of what it is to be human in a memory.
Yep. Other than that, in this episode, we see Agnes, the Agnes Borg Queen, doing some messed up shit, breaking windows for endorphins or whatever, and
I guess she wanted to speed along the takeover of Agnes.
Whatever, just that sounds like a bunch of bullshit based on previous iterations of Trek. And of course, Rios and Dr. Teresa, they seem to be having some sort of budding romance. Jean-Luc goes to Guinan, and he needs to talk to Q because obviously there's something from his past that Q wants him to remember, and Jean-Luc doesn't know what it is, but whatever. So he goes to Guinan, and she tries to summon a Q, and it doesn't work. But instead, the FBI shows up and arrests Guinan and Jean-Luc.
And it was weird because what Guinan was doing to summon a Q, it was like some weird religious ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to summon some demon or something. It did not feel like Star Trek at all.
Well, she was talking about the denizens of Q. I mean, it did sound a lot like some sort of weird religious thing.
And they had this container of some sort, and was it some sort of energy in there? Or?
Well, food and drink unites us, and apparently this was a bottle that had been poured and drunk when there was, a truce declared between the Elorians and the Q, whenever the hell that was. So, like, if you open up the bottle, that moment is still caught in the bottle or some shit, and it's supposed to summon a Q. It was stupid. This whole episode was just terrible.
This was bad. I mean, the summoning was so cringy. It was as cringy as last week when Agnes was singing. I mean, not that the actress couldn't sing, but the context of why she was singing and the band playing along. This was as bad as that. It was cringy. I was embarrassed to watch this scene.
Yeah, I mean, I literally groaned out loud when, the FBI showed up. It was just, oh God, it was so ridiculous. So that was the episode. I think the most pathetic thing about this is that, again, there have been shows that have done this same trope recently and better. It was 2019, but Doom Patrol, which at the time was DC, now it's on HBO Max.
Still DC, but it was on the DC streaming service.
Yeah.
And then when that went belly up, it got moved over to HBO Max.
Yeah. Season 1, Episode 9, Jane Patrol. Similar situation. They have a character, Jane, who is in a coma. They're going to have to go inside her psyche, also known as the underground, where all of her personalities are because she has multiple personalities.
And memories. Which is similar to Picard.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're going to have to go into her psyche, the underground, in order to find her and pull her back out. Again, it was done better than what we just saw in Star Trek Picard.
And we looked this up. This episode, Jane Patrol, although not exact, the majority of the context of the story was based on a comic run by Grant Morrison from 1987. I don't know when this exact issue was done.
It was either the late 80s or early 90s.
Yeah, it was decades ago. So the Doom Patrol TV series, this episode was based on a comic, a specific couple of volumes of a comic. It ticks me off that we already talked about the Battlestar Galactica ripping off. This wasn't just kind of ripping off Jane Patrol from the TV series, which was based on the comic. This was ripping large ideas from that.
Yeah.
The different personas, the exploring. You had somebody coming in from the outside world, going into this new world and trying to help out and to pull the person back out. And we rewatched Jane Patrol after watching this because we wanted to make sure we were remembering that episode correctly. And that was such a better piece of work.
Yeah.
If you have access to HBO Max or access to accidentally finding stuff on the internet, look for Season 1, Episode 9, Jane Patrol. You don't really have to understand the context around it other than what we explained.
Yep.
And as far as that kind of metaphysical imagery of inside somebody's psyche, it was so much better done than what they did with Picard.
Well, yeah, no, in Jane Patrol, her friend Cliff, who is Robot Man, so he's basically a brain in a tin can, we'll just say. He needs to go into Jane's psyche, her underground, in order to find her, and it's facilitated by the negative spirit that lives inside Larry, one of the other members of the Doom Patrol. It was a lot like how Laris, put that thing on her head, or Talon. Talon put that Romulan ear-looking thing on her head in order to enter.
Her eyes turned all white.
Yeah. Yeah, so that she could go into Jean-Luc's psyche and try to figure out what the hell was going on in there. So again, Cliff gets into the underground. He has to encounter all of these memories and the different personalities and overcome obstacles to find Jane and to help her get back out, which is exactly what happened inside Jean-Luc Picard's head, only it was done better. And the other thing I'll say about all of that was that with Doom Patrol, the character of Jane, she, I think in the show, she's played by a younger woman. However, I think the character herself is supposed to be like in her 50s, maybe even older.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was when they showed her in her house. Was it Kay? Is that the...
Yeah.
I think they said, like, was it Arkansas, 1950 or something like that?
Something like that. So, okay, so she'd be in her 70s. But again, she's a metahuman. So, I mean, she has powers and things like that. She doesn't age like normal people. But here's the thing. This character in her 70s dealing with this traumatic abuse she suffered as a child is very different from Jean-Luc Picard at 90 or whatever he is, dealing with, I guess, some trauma from when he was a child. The difference being, Jean-Luc went out and had a very successful career with Starfleet. He's an admiral. Jane, on the other hand, is just one of 64 different personalities, and she has basically lived life in and out of mental institutions.
Because Jane's not even the real personality. She's just one of those many personalities. Kay is the original personality.
Yeah, so I mean, it makes sense that here's this woman who was traumatized to the point where her personality split into 64 different ones, and her life was a complete mess, versus Jean-Luc with a successful career. Now, all of a sudden, he has parent issues.
What was his trauma? That his mother had a mental condition?
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't really know yet, do we?
Trauma?
Yeah. So again, it's like, oh, what does this key unlock when he lets his mom out of the closet or wherever the hell Dad stashed her? Yeah, so it makes no sense whatsoever. And this is what happens when you go back and you try to rewrite history. You can't do that. You know, retrofitting what you want the story to be now to fit with what came before, good luck with that, because it's not going to turn out well. Because either there were signs all along, I guess I'm talking about the suspension of disbelief at this point, as far as a believable story.
If Picard's character through the Next Generation, and I guess the film, if he would have suggested that this was a problem for him, that he had been, I mean, it looks like he's got mommy issues is what this is turning into.
Oh, well, we'd been led to believe that it was his father that he had the issues with, but now I guess they think that they're so clever writing it now that instead it's actually his mommy who had the issues. Again, it's like rich people writing about what it's like to be poor. It's so tone deaf. It just drives me nuts.
I was watching this. The first thing that came to mind for me was these people do not understand mental illness.
Nope.
And what they are doing, like they did, not just with this series, but Georgiou and all the other racial stereotypes they've been doing throughout their entire Secret Hideout run. Tilly and you know, dealing with autism in a very not flattering way. Now they're dealing with mental illness and they're stomping around and not understanding what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing something else that they don't know what they're doing, and they're making offensive material.
Yep.
And nobody wants to call them out on their offensive material that they're making.
Well, I'll call them out on it. I have no problem doing that.
I don't know where this is going, but I didn't care for the way it was done, the way his mother was portrayed, and I didn't really care for that whole, what they thought was a clever, him being interviewed by the psychologist inside of his own psyche, and it was Gaius Baltar. I didn't care for any of that. Like, I was offended by that. Having that actor appear just reminded me of how they plagiarize things. But just the way that was handled in the dialogue. And I've seen online people praising that dialogue, and I don't get it. That was more ham-fisted stuff that offended me. And it offended me in a way that I would think that people with real mental illness would have a problem with, because I didn't feel they handled this with reverence at all. This was all caricature of things.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it at all. I didn't like the way they were trying to, that prince, I mean, the imagery of the prince and the way that was handled. I didn't appreciate any of that, especially when I compare it to Jane Patrol from Doom Patrol and how that was handled with respect, so that you felt what Jane and Kay and all the rest of those personalities were protecting and trying to get over, versus what Picard was getting over. Because what Kay got over was she was molested as a child by her father, I'm guessing, over and over again. And that's what she was trying to get over. And if it turns out that all Picard's dealing with is he had to deal with his mom who had some mental issues, you can't even compare those two things.
No. No, and again, if he was that mentally weak that this is fucking him up at 90 years old, how the hell did he have his Starfleet career?
Starfleet used to, like when Wesley was trying to get into the academy in the Next Generation, and they ran through all those psychological tests.
Yep.
So you're telling me this never cropped up during the battery of tests that I'm sure Picard went through?
Oh, I can see it now. People are going to be like, oh, but, he had repressed this stuff so well that it really wasn't an issue till Q dug it up. Well, you know what? Then it's not even worth talking about. It's just not.
I think that there were several instances, I can find several Next Generation episodes where dealing with children. I guess the argument is, well, that's why, I don't know, maybe Picard doesn't like children for this reason.
No,
It reminds him of when he was a child. It's like, nah, I don't buy that.
No, that's like the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
I don't buy that at all. This is dumb. This is stupid. I don't know. This show is now, I said last week, this show is a toast series, and this reaffirms it. This is a garbage series. They have no ideas. They're stomping around covering material that they have no business covering because they don't know what they're doing. The ICE immigration stuff, they didn't know what they were doing. Now, we'll see where they go next week, but so far I have not cared for how they're dealing with mental illness in this episode.
Nope.
This show, these people behind this show, they disgust me. These people must be very, very not nice people the way they do things. And the fact that they get praised as some sort of avenue toward the future where these are people that are going to bring us to the future, real humanity. We're opening up diversity and we're talking about all these issues that were taboo before. Yeah, but you're not. You're not handling them in a way that you should be handling these things to show that you're treating them with respect.
Yeah.
You're just sticking them out there to say, yeah, see, we covered this. Yeah, you didn't do a good job, but I guess you can say that topic was sort of covered.
Well, that's what I've said all along. We don't need just diversity of faces in front of the camera. We need diversity of voices behind it. And I'm not just talking skin color or sex. I'm talking about personal experience of life. Things like socioeconomics.
Stop with the rich college people writing all the stories. I would like to have a Walter Mosley in the writing room.
Yep.
To bring a different perspective to these people, because what they're writing, they just sit around and I think they just congratulate themselves.
Yeah.
They're all part of the same group, the same clique. They don't have any diversity of opinion.
No.
So there's no diversity of opinion. So
no diversity of thought.
That to me is the most important thing. Yes, is diversity of thought, diversity of opinion on issues. They lack that. This is the least diverse Star Trek era that we've lived through.
Yep.
Because they all share a single opinion about stuff.
Yep.
And the writing room is just echoing that same thing. There's no diversity in the room. Skin color and sex is irrelevant when you look on screen and you look at the stories. Sticking a bunch of people with different colors or different sexes on screen, if they're all spewing the same ideas, that shows me there's no diversity of opinion. And this show and Discovery show me the writers have zero diversity of opinion. They work in lockstep with all their ideas.
Yep.
And the Walter Mosley story tells me when somebody threatens their little worldview of how they look at things, they have to aggressively get rid of that. Yeah, cancel them. Because Walter Mosley was a threat to the narrative that they were setting about things, because he actually had a real perspective of how racism works in this country that they wanted nothing to do with. You can't tell these people, you can't tell these people how racism works in the country. They already understand it somehow, and they're going to write about it. Bringing in somebody who actually has experienced it, nah, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
This is disgusting and embarrassing. I said last week I was embarrassed for these people, and I'm even more so now. I'm embarrassed about what they're doing. Stealing from Battlestar Galactica and Doom Patrol, which essentially is what this season is, mixed in with some ICE stuff. Mm-hmm. That's all they're doing. I guess if people just want to watch mashups, this is no different than somebody on YouTube putting clips together of different series and saying, look, I made my own original property. And these people get paid a lot of money to do this, and then you get people applauding this stuff. I mean, I've had it with this series. This episode offended me, and I'm scared to see what next week is going to bring, because They have no, there is no line they won't cross. And I don't mean that in a way like they're trying to expand our minds. There is no level of offense that these people will not cross. And when you complain about what they're doing, they will call you all sorts of horrible names. I'm hoping in 10 years when people look back at this stuff, it's going to be exposed for the garbage, plagiaristic, insensitive material that it is.
Yep. Terrible episode. Watch Doom Patrol, Jane Patrol, Season 1, Episode 9. Or watch The Venture Brothers, Assisted Suicide, Season 4, Episode 14. That aired in 2010 originally. And in that one, the character, he's actually got somebody else at the controls of his head, and a necromancer has to go in and help boot the jackass out so that Rusty, the main character, can wake up. It goes through all of the ghosts living in his head. It dealt much better with the issues that Star Trek Picard tried to deal with. So yeah, don't watch Star Trek Picard. Holy shit, that was so bad. You know, watch Doom Patrol or Venture Brothers instead if you want a story like that. Because they were done much better.
And if you want to keep up with what's happening with Picard, just keep watching our videos. We will finish this series till the end, or at least this season. So we'll keep you up to date on what's actually happening in the episodes. But don't waste your time watching this stuff.
No.
There's much better material out there. Watch the original source material they're stealing from, because it's done so much better.
Yep. Well, that's all I have to say about that. Anybody else know of any stories told in a similar fashion? Well, any other stories with a similar trope that were done better? Drop them in the comments, because we'd love to check that out. Like, subscribe, tell your friends about us. And I think we're finally caught up now, at least with Star Trek. So, thank you so much for hanging in there with us.
Take care.